What a day in the great state of Nevada. Guns drawn as one rancher is taking on the federal government over land. I'm Harris Faulkner. At this hour, what appears to be a bit of a break in what has been tense hours all day long on this Saturday of a standoff there. The Bureau of Land Management is now saying it will back off, citing safety concerns for the public and the protesters. Earlier, protesters went along the interstate trying to get the cattle back. Heavily armed federal agents on one side of this thing, a rancher and hundreds of his supporters on the other. And this brand new video just coming in moments ago showing the cows that were taken off the land are now being released back to rancher Clive Bundy. That's his name, the man at the center of it all. This all began about a week ago. Agents from land management began rounding up cattle owned by that rancher Bundy. Bundy says the animals have been grazing on that land since the 19th century. The federal agency says it's public land and the cattle have to go. William Lajeunesse joins us now from Bunkerville, Nevada, with the very latest. And William, Clive Bundy finally getting what he wants, at least for now.
Well, the federal government has entirely backed down, Harris. They have removed some 250 armed agents and hired hands. And as you said moments ago, releasing 200 to 400 cattle, head of cattle that belong to the family.
I am so happy I get to open the gates. I get to open the gates and let our babies out, our calves. They get to go back home. They get to go home to the river.
The BLM had seized Bundy's cattle over the last 7 days using helicopters and hired cowboys to round them up on 1,500 acres. They say this land is off limits to cattle, reserved for the desert tortoise, that he's been here illegally for 20 years and ignored 2 court orders and refused to pay. But early this morning, 9 o'clock, BLM said it was backing off, giving up, going home. Initially, however, they refused to give up the cattle, which prompted this. 200 to 300 protesters shutting down I-15, openly carrying their firearms, both long rifles as well as sidearms. Then in a standoff of police and SWAT, maybe 3 dozen, they actually rushed the BLM gate, but were turned back, then a break, and they negotiated the release of those cattle. Harris?
William, for a while there, we were watching so closely. You're reporting today as well. This got really bad very quickly. The size of that crowd, so much larger than it had been just a few days ago. What happened today to bring this on so fast?
Well, number one, it's the weekend, of course, but you know what? There's a lot of people here from all over the West, so-called patriots, militia, sympathetic rural families who have adopted his fight as their own. They also see the federal government as overbearing and intrusive on their way of life, a threat to their livelihood. So basically, they came out here, they joined with him, and they said they did not want violence, but they saw him as a victim. They don't necessarily agree with everything he did and the fact that he, as many say, is an outlaw, has refused to pay his bill. On the other hand, they see him as a folk hero. And they say they disagreed with the BLM, the way they enforced the law. Here's some sound.
This used to be a free nation. We used to have rights. And people have just had enough.
We just took one hill, we're going to take Capitol Hill next.
Now the BLM says they are going to try to administratively and judicially try to resolve this with Bundy. Obviously it hasn't worked the last 200 years, but one thing we do know, it does appear that it has resolved itself peacefully, but clearly in this case the federal government misjudged the response of the people here. Harris?
Well, and William, from what you're saying and what I'm reading now, the physical part of this, I mean, the federal government has pulled back off that land, but that bill, that $1.1 million bill that the feds say that Clive Bundy owes, what happens to that?
Well, he has said that he would not pay the federal government because he does not recognize their authority here. He has said he would pay the state government, but it refused to take the payment. Like you pay your state taxes to the state and your federal taxes to the feds. Point being, at this point, he has remained defiant, and I don't think at this point he is going to pay the federal government $1 million for grazing fees over the last 20 years. How it will resolve itself in that manner, I'm not sure. Back to you.
Boy, I tell you, guns drawn just a few hours ago. Thank goodness this turned out peacefully. William Lajeunesse live for us tonight in Nevada. Thank you very much.